Hey friend, I wanted to quickly make this video to just show how you can make your own custom game board as a child class of the BP game board. So I made this test map here and I just added a direction light and plane. So we're just going to make our custom board here. How I like to do it is I like to just make a blueprint class, and then in the all classes section I search for game board. And then instead of selecting CGC game board, I actually go and select BP game board base, because CGC game board is the C++ class, but BP game board base is basically, think of this as the game board that any board you make would inherit off of if it does not inherit from a derivative of this game board. So for example, if I'm making a different variant, I would generally make it a BP game board base class. But if I am making, let's say, something that is like a classical chess board, but I just want it to look different, then I'll just go ahead and just select classical chess game board here. But just for this video and to accommodate multiple use cases, I'm going to do BP game board base. And I'll just name this test board. So what I like to do is, as soon as I make the board, I like to just drag it in the level immediately so I can just get to work. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the top here and then change the scale to 0.1. Nice. I'm also going to zoom in a little bit, get closer to the board. All right, I think that's good. All right, so you can see once I put in this board, it's empty, and I mean, there's pretty much nothing going on here. So I'm going to make this a chessboard. So what I'll do here to make this a chessboard is go over to the details panel with the board selected, and then scroll all the way down to components classes. This is the most important part of setting up your custom board, because each component class basically dictates how that functionality will work. So for example, your AI component class will be in charge of how the AI is going to interact with the board and how it's also going to interpret the board. And your appearance component class basically manages how the board is going to look. And the interaction component class also would manage the how you interact with the pieces or different aspects of the board. Basically, this how you interact with the squares on the board. Same thing with the move tracker, is a way to track all the moves that have been made in the board. And the variant component, this is probably the most important class outside of the interaction component. I'll probably say interaction and variant component are of equal importance. So the variant component basically dictates the rules of your variants. So your interaction components, your appearance components, like all these different components will look to the variant components to determine how things would basically affect the rules of the game. So the transcription component works in tandem with the move tracker, and what it does is it transcribes the moves and allow you do things like imports PGN or FEN, and basically like change from different read different formats. And the timer component is in charge of the timer, and the puzzle component basically is in charge of puzzles. So for what I'm going to do here is the AI and appearance can stay as base, but I'm going to go ahead and change the interaction component here to classical chess. And I'm going to do the same thing for the move tracker and change that to classical. and also set classical chess for the variants. And you can see as soon as I set the variance components, everything just pops up. I see all my pieces because the board basically looks to the variants to know, what the rules are, how the pieces would be laid out, and so on. So I'll go ahead and select classical chess for my transcription components. Don't necessarily need a timer, but I'm just going to go ahead and select classical chess for the timer. And then I'll do the same thing for the puzzle and select classical chess for the puzzle. Perfect. So now I have my component classes set. I'm just going to go ahead and double check my settings here and make sure everything looks right to me. So far it looks right. I'll just go ahead and instead of algebraic, I'm just going to select none here. So there's no notation and or no notation on the board. Also, one thing to note here in the settings is the game type. This is what is in charge of, I guess, like what kind of game you're playing. So are you playing over the board, which is basically pass and play? Are you playing network mode, which is multiplayer? Are you in analysis mode where you're basically looking over moves? Are you playing a puzzle or are you playing versus the AI? This dictates all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and select over the board for this one. So the reason I'm not selecting AI as a side note is that the AI needs to know what side it's playing on when it's being initialized. So just based, that's currently being done through the menu. So that's something to notice, that if you're going to use versus AI, you would need to initially set the AI. I'll go over that in a separate tutorial for the AI. So I'll go ahead and do over the board here. Keep scrolling up, make sure everything else looks fine, which it does. And then there's the appearance section here. So this is basically how things would look. I like these pieces, but just for the fun of it, I'm going to go and select the generic pieces. Nice. So now we're using the generic pieces, and then I'm going to play. So once I hovered over the board, I can see that the squares are being highlighted. And once I select a square, my HUD shows up and I can move the pieces based on classical chess rules. So I can capture this pawn. Let's see if en passant works here. Nice. So I can do en passant. Awesome. So that's the classical chess variants. Something else that is really cool that I wanted to show is, because the interaction works using the interaction components, you can easily just switch this interaction component out and the pieces would now be able to move a different way. So I've just set this interaction component to the base component here, which basically means there are no limitations for the pieces. You can select a piece and move it anywhere you want. So I can pretty much select this pawn and capture this king, and the game still goes on because the interaction is not using classical chess rules. So that's something interesting that I wanted to just show, how you can basically decide how your pieces would move using your interaction components. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope it helps with you setting up your custom game board. If you have any issues, feel free to shoot a message in the Discord. So, alright, take care.